So it was my very first day at my very first legit job, and I was scared shitless and witless. I had no business working in any business. I had zero. The only skill I basically had back then was maybe doing 64 counts of dancing, because I wanted to be a dancer and an actress. And I never thought I would ever be in an office situation. But here I was. And the only reason I was here was because a friend of mine, Peter Weller, who you might recognize the name because he portrayed RoboCop back in the olden days. And I thought, anyone who can wear aluminum foil or aluminum siding, you got to listen. And he had said to me one day in dance class, Sandy, I want you to meet my agent, this guy, J. Michael Bloom. And I thought that he thought that I was packing some kind of heat, that I had skills and talent and I was adorable. But no, he said, you're a people person. I think you would do a really good job if you would train to learn how to be a talent agent, which wasn't really what I wanted to hear. But I was so broke and desperate that I thought, listen, if he's telling me to go do this, I should at least try. So I went on an interview, and I don't know how I got hired because I was an idiot. I'm still not that smart. I got 740 combined on my SATs. Do you know how stupid you have to be to do that badly? You get like 650 just to sign in. But anyway, so I go and I interview and I somehow get the job. And now here I am at my first day of work at 400 Madison Avenue. I'm sitting in the reception area and I'm fiddling with my clothes because I'm looking around and everyone there is so good looking and sexy. And I am not. I look like Marie Osmond on a really bad day, and I'm wearing my Ann Taylor petite separates, like casual separates for a girl at work, and I keep buttoning and unbuttoning my blouse, like the top button, because if I open it up too much, I'm going to look like a whore, which might not be bad, but not necessarily appropriate for office, like, etiquette. But if I close the top button, I'm going to look like somebody's sister wife, which is not really what I was going for. So as I'm fiddling and moving my skirt around, all of a sudden out bounds Stephen, my boss. And he is stunning. He's like 6'2" with the bluest eyes you have ever seen and a shock of premature gray hair and a mustache to match. And he's wearing a beige linen suit that's not wrinkled. And he has on these beige buckskin shoes that match. He's stunning, and he's super tall, like 6'2", with his arms and legs gangly. Like if you're old enough to remember who Tommy Toon is or Peter Allen, he looked like he was going to just run a parade. He was going to be the grand marshal of the best gay pride parade ever, and I wanted to be on his float. Okay, so he said, "Come on back," and I said, "Fine." So I follow him. And at that moment, I knew I would follow this dude off of a cliff like Thelma and Louise. I mean, I would do anything he said, because what I know about myself, what most of you wouldn't know, is that I am a gay man that lives inside of a straight woman's body. I just always thought of myself as, one part Harvey Fierstein and one part, I don't know, Peter Allen. And I just love the idea of telling bitchy stories and making fun of my friends and gossiping and just doing all those snide and sarcastic things that all of my gay friends were doing back there. And I thought, well, I can hang in there with them. That's me. I want to be as snide as they are. And Stephen was my flavor, and I loved him. So we go back to the office, and it's at the end of the hall. And meanwhile, he's pointing out, okay, this is where we make copies, and this is where we keep pictures and resumes. It was a big file room. And he said, all right, let's go back into the office. And I'm not listening to anything. It's like Charlie Brown white noise, because I'm madly in love with Stephen. And he says, this is your desk. And I settle down and I try to regulate my heartbeat and my breathing. And over the next few weeks, I calm down, and he teaches me everything I need to know to be an assistant in the commercial voiceover department at this office. And it was probably the biggest agency in New York at the time. And I was so afraid, but I learned as I was going along. And he taught me how to talk to casting directors, and he taught me how to really listen for voices and pick great talent and go to showcases and be kind to everybody. money and just work really hard, which for me was a pleasure because I just wanted to be with Stephen 24 hours a day. And my friends were kind of concerned because they thought I was just working too many hours. But for me, it was as if I had climbed across some poppy field and I had found the best Emerald City I was ever going to find. And I never wanted to leave. It was fantastic. And he also taught me the really important skills that I would need to be a grown-up in New York City and have a more sophisticated life, like how to saute soft-shell crabs, what does endive look like, how to order Japanese food, because back in 1982, this wasn't really a thing. We weren't all ordering Japanese food. This was new. So I was learning the difference between a California roll and eel, and I was loving all of it and drinking sake with him. And then he would take me out with his friends to clubs like Studio 54, where they were all dancing and doing amyl nitrate, which are poppers, while I was dancing behind him, you know, like as if I was really fitting in. I wasn't. He was just being so nice. He was letting me come along and meet all his boyfriends. Like he had this one boyfriend who was in the Navy, and he would show up in the office with his whites on looking like Richard Gere and an officer and a gentleman. I just loved every part of my life at that office at J. Michael Bloom. And it was so splendid all the time until around mid-1983 when actors started getting sick. And we didn't know why. But one after another, first they'd call and say they couldn't make auditions, and then they were out of commission for a while. And then we started going to visit them at St. Vincent's downtown and other hospitals. And we were told to suit up and put on face masks and gloves, so much so like we do now with COVID. But back then, we weren't really sure, were we putting on these outfits to protect us or to protect the patient? We didn't know what this was, and they kept calling it gay pneumonia or gay cancer, which didn't make any sense to us. But then we started having to go to memorial services, and that's when shit got real. And our incredible Technicolor world filled with musicians and dancers and actors and just writers of all kinds were starting to disappear. And this Technicolor world was becoming sort of like sepia. It was just so sad. And Stephen and I would keep our funeral clothes in the office. I would keep a black dress hanging in the closet because at any given day we were going to get a call that there was going to be a memorial service uptown or downtown. We had to be prepared. And this became an every week, everyday thing, and we never became numb to it. Just the same way that I don't think anyone became numb to all of the death and the illness in the last year and a half with COVID. Well, back then, it was just one tragedy after another. Young, beautiful men and some women and older people too were dying, and we just couldn't understand why nobody was doing anything about it. It was just on and on for years where, you know, we had to become activists because there were no cures. And at some point, Stephen finally said, enough. I can't do this anymore. And I tried to humor him. And the only thing I could give him was one area of skill that I had. So he taught me so much. I was so grateful for it. I knew I had to give him something. So every day we would lock the door of our office around 12 o'clock. And I would teach him the entire opening combination to a chorus line, which is just, and we would do fan kicks, and we would just flip our heads, and we would just kick around and just lunge and laugh so hard playing that music from a chorus line. And people in the other offices didn't know what the fuck was going on, but we didn't care. This was what we were doing to cope. This was what we had. We had Michael Bennett's choreography to keep us going. And it did for a while until it got so much for Stephen. Now, thank God he remained healthy. He never got ill, but he had it. And he said, Sandi, I got to get out of here. And he decided that he was going to change careers, which he did. And he became a motivational speaker, which was really a great move because he motivated me to be a better person. And I knew he could do that for hundreds or thousands of other people. And he promoted me to replace him. So I, at like 25 years old, became the youngest agent at that agency, even though I still didn't really know anything. But I had enough people skills and a love for actors that I knew that I would figure it out along the way. And we stayed very close, and years went by, and I kept learning the lessons that Stephen had taught me by practicing it with doing this job until finally, a few years later after that, three of my coworkers and I decided to open up our own agency called SEM&M, and we did, and we became probably busier than the agency I had worked at. So Stephen really had done his job. And our first day when we opened, I found on my desk this huge box, a wooden box filled with tulips, and they were all standing straight up at attention like dancers on a Broadway stage. And I knew right away, I didn't even have to look at the card, this was from Stephen. And it was. And he said, Sandi, just do what you do and just be yourself and work hard and just love everybody and take care of them, which is what he had taught me. And I did and loved it. And I went on doing that for many, many years. And it was all wonderful, except the thing that was missing was Stephen. He needed to be there. So finally, when I can look back now, and I had so many miraculous adventures. I used to go to events where I once went out to dinner with Dennis Rodman and Marissa Tomei sitting next to me at the same fucking table. I mean, how do you talk to Dennis Rodman and Marissa Tomei? And then I went to the Grammy Awards one year and I shoved Grace Jones out of the way so I can get to the buffet table because I'm Jewish and there was shrimp and I needed to get over there as fast as I could. But I did all these things and I had such a wonderful career. But if I look back at it now and if I could do it all over, I'd give all that up. I really would, because the only thing that I would want to do, if I could, in my fantasy world, is go back to 400 Madison Avenue, lock the door with Stephen inside with me, and dance to Marvin Hamlish. Thank you.